The morning sun rose over Nueva Terra like it did every day. Han Ji-woo stood at the cargo dock, checking containers as they arrived from the transport ships. Her job was simple and boring. She counted boxes, checked numbers, and made sure everything went to the right place. Nobody bothered her. Nobody asked questions. That was exactly how she wanted it. Ji-woo was 32 years old, but her eyes looked much older. She wore plain gray work clothes and kept her black hair tied back in a simple knot. When other workers tried to talk to her, she gave short answers and walked away. After 8 years of this, people learned to leave her alone. The spaceport was busy today. Ships came and went, carrying food, supplies, and people between the colony and other worlds. Nueva Terra was a peaceful place, far from Earth and far from any trouble. Most people who lived here wanted a quiet life. Ji-woo was no different, or so everyone thought. She lived in a small apartment in the old part of the colony. The building was worn down, and the walls were thin. Her neighbor was an elderly woman named Park Hae-won. The old woman was kind and often brought Ji-woo homemade food. Hae-won was the only person Ji-woo talked to regularly. And even then, Ji-woo never said much about herself. One evening, Hae-won knocked on Ji-woo's door with a container of soup. "You work too hard." "Dear," Hae-won said, handing over the warm container. "You need to eat properly." "Thank you," Ji-woo said quietly. She took the soup but didn't invite Hae-won inside. The old woman looked at her with curious eyes. "You know, I was a military nurse during the war. I saw a lot of soldiers. They all had that same look in their eyes that you have." Ji-woo's hand tightened on the container. "I don't know what you mean." Hae-won smiled softly. "Of course you don't. Just remember, whatever you're running from, it might not stay away forever." The old woman patted Ji-woo's arm and walked back to her own apartment. Ji-woo closed the door and leaned against it. She looked at the bare walls of her apartment. No pictures, no decorations, nothing that connected her to any past. That was how it had to be. The person she used to be was dead. She had made sure of it. 8 years ago there had been a war. The First Contact War, people called it. Alien ships had come to human space looking for conquest. Humanity had fought back, but it was a close thing. Many people died. Many heroes rose up. One of those heroes had been a pilot called the Phoenix. The Phoenix had been legendary. She flew like no one else, won battles that should have been impossible, and saved Earth's main defense fleet at a place called Titan's Gate. Military leaders said she was the best pilot humanity had ever produced. But after the war ended, the Phoenix disappeared on a classified mission. The government said she died a hero. That was the story everyone believed. The truth was different. The truth was that the Phoenix had been so tired of death and fighting that she couldn't do it anymore. She had watched too many friends die. She had killed too many enemies. When the war ended, she looked at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. So she made a choice. She erased her identity, created a new one, and ran as far as she could from anything connected to combat. She became Han Ji-woo, cargo dock supervisor. Nobody special, nobody important, and for 8 years it worked. Then the alarms started ringing. Ji-woo was at work when the emergency sirens went off across the colony. Everyone stopped what they were doing. The speakers crackled to life. "Attention all citizens. Unknown vessels have entered our system. This is not a drill. Proceed to emergency shelters immediately." People panicked. Workers dropped their equipment and ran. Ji-woo stood still, her heart pounding. She looked up at the sky. Even though she couldn't see space from where she stood, something told her this was bad. Very bad. The defense coordinator for Nueva Terra was a man named Lee Tae-yang. He was a former military officer who ran the colony's small militia. When the first reports came in about the alien ships, Tae-yang felt his stomach drop. There were 12 massive warships, each bigger than anything the colony had. They carried weapons that could crack planets. The aliens sent a message. They called themselves the Vakran Empire. They didn't want to negotiate. They wanted the colony to surrender and become their property. If the humans refused, the Vakran would kill everyone and take the planet anyway. Tae-yang scrambled every defense ship they had. Nueva Terra wasn't a military colony. They had maybe 20 small fighters and a handful of people who knew how to fly them. Most were cargo pilots or former civilian flight instructors. Ji-woo watched from the edge of the spaceport as the defense ships launched into space. She watched their exhaust trails disappear into the sky. She counted to 60 in her head. The explosions started at 43 seconds. Through the spaceport's monitors, everyone could see what was happening in orbit. The human fighters approached the Vakran ships. The aliens didn't even try to dodge. They just fired, and the human ships exploded one after another. It was over in less than 3 minutes. 16 fighters destroyed. 16 pilots dead. The remaining 4 defense ships retreated, damaged, and barely functional. Jiwoo stared at the monitors. Her hands were shaking. She forced them to be still. Around her, people were crying, screaming, praying. Someone said they should evacuate the planet. Someone else said there was nowhere to run. Taeyang's voice came over the emergency broadcast again. He tried to sound calm, but Jiwoo could hear the fear underneath. All citizens with any military or combat experience, please report to the Colonial Defense Center immediately. We need every person who can help. Jiwoo turned and walked away from the monitors. She headed toward her apartment. She told herself it wasn't her problem anymore. She wasn't that person. She couldn't be that person. But as she walked through the streets, she saw families running toward shelters. She saw children crying. She saw people helping each other, holding hands, staying together even though they were terrified. She saw Hyewan struggling to carry a bag toward the nearest shelter. Jiwoo ran over and took the bag. "Let me help you." Hyewan looked at her with those wise old eyes. "Are you going to help them fight too?" "I can't," Jiwoo whispered. "Can't or won't." Hyewan asked gently. Jiwoo didn't answer. She helped the old woman into the shelter and then stood outside, looking up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the Vakran ships were waiting. Somewhere up there, people were about to die. She turned away and started walking home. But with each step, the weight on her chest grew heavier. The person she used to be was supposed to be dead. But Nueva Terra was dying right now, and everyone on it would follow soon. Jiwoo didn't know if she could save them. She wasn't sure if she even remembered how to fight anymore. But she knew one thing for certain. Running away was getting harder with every passing second. The Vakran broadcast came 3 hours after they destroyed the defense ships. Every screen in Nueva Terra showed the same thing. A massive insectoid creature filled the displays. Its body was covered in dark armor plates, and its 6 eyes glowed red. When it spoke, the translation device made its voice sound like grinding metal. "I am Commander Thexar of the Vakran Empire. Your defense was pathetic. Your ships burned like toys. This world now belongs to us." People gathered in shelters, in homes, anywhere they could watch. Jiwoo stood in her apartment, staring at her screen. The alien's image made her skin crawl, but not from fear. From memory. She had fought creatures like this before. She knew how they thought, how they moved, how they died. Thexar continued speaking. "But we Vakran are not without honor. We offer you one chance. One of your pilots will face one of ours in single combat. If your champion wins, we will leave your world. If your champion loses, you will all become slaves of the Empire." The commander's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "We have done this with 47 species. None have ever won. You will not be the first. You have 12 hours to choose your champion. If you refuse, we begin destroying your cities." The screen went black. Jiwoo sat down on her couch. She knew what the Vakran were doing. It wasn't about honor. It was about breaking human spirit. They wanted people to watch their best pilot die to see that resistance was hopeless. They wanted humanity to give up before the real invasion began. At the Colonial Defense Center, Taeyang gathered everyone with military experience. There weren't many. Most were former cargo pilots or engineers. A few had served in non-combat roles during the First Contact War. Only one person claimed to be a real combat pilot. His name was Choi Woo-jin. He was 24 years old, confident, and eager to prove himself. He had trained at a civilian flight academy and scored high marks in every simulation. He wore his flight jacket like a badge of honor. "I can do this," Woo-jin said, standing before Taeyang and the other officers. "I've logged over 3,000 hours in simulators. I know every combat maneuver in the manual." Taeyang wanted to believe him. He wanted to think that enthusiasm and skill would be enough. But he had seen the footage of the Vakran ships. He had seen how quickly they killed experienced pilots. "Simulations aren't real combat," Taeyang said carefully. "Then let me prove it in real combat." Woo-jin insisted. "I'm the best pilot you have, that was the problem." He probably was the best pilot they had, and he was going to die. Taeyang spent the next few hours reviewing every person who had registered with the Defense Center. Most were useless for combat. A few could maybe fly a transport ship. None could face a Vakran warrior and survive. Then his assistant found something interesting. Sir, there's a cargo supervisor at the main spaceport. Her credentials show expert-level scores on advanced flight simulators. The system flagged it as unusual for someone in her position. Tae Yang looked at the file. And Ji Woo, age 32. 8 years at the same job. No military service listed. But those simulator scores were incredible. Higher than Woo Jin's. Higher than anyone's. Bring her in for questioning, Tae Yang ordered. Ji Woo was at the spaceport when the security team arrived. She knew why they were there before they even spoke. She had gotten careless practicing on the simulators during her lunch breaks. It was a habit she couldn't break, even after all these years. They brought her to the defense center and put her in a small room. Tae Yang entered a few minutes later carrying a tablet. Miss Han, I need to ask you some questions about your flight experience. I work with cargo, Ji Woo said flatly. I don't fly ships. Then explain these scores. Tae Yang showed her the tablet. Her simulator results filled the screen. Perfect scores on scenarios that most military pilots couldn't complete. I like video games, Ji Woo said. These aren't games. These are classified military training programs. You'd need high-level security clearance just to access them. Ji Woo said nothing. Tae Yang leaned forward. We need pilots. Real pilots. If you have any combat experience at all, now is the time to tell me. I don't, Ji Woo lied. Tae Yang studied her face. He saw something there hidden deep. Pain, guilt, the look of someone carrying heavy secrets. He had seen that look before in war veterans. Fine, he said. You're free to go. Ji Woo stood and left quickly. But Tae Yang wasn't done investigating. He had 8 hours left before the Vakrin deadline. He assigned his best intelligence officer to dig deeper into Han Ji Woo's background. Meanwhile, Woo Jin prepared for his flight. The maintenance crew worked on the best fighter they had, an interceptor-class ship called Hwaseong 7. The mechanic in charge was Kang Sung-ho, a middle-aged man who had been fixing ships for 20 years. This bird is old, Sung-ho said to Woo Jin. She's reliable, but her weapons are outdated. Her shields are weak compared to what the Vakrin have. I don't need the best ship, Woo Jin said confidently. I need a ship that responds to my commands. That's enough. Sung-ho wanted to argue, but what was the point? The kid was brave. Stupid maybe, but brave. That counted for something. The deadline came. Woo Jin climbed into the Hwaseong 7. The entire colony watched on their screens as he launched into space. The Vakrin were waiting. Their champion was a pilot named Krevith, flying a biomechanical fighter that looked more like a living creature than a machine. The battle began. Woo Jin flew well. He remembered his training. He executed textbook maneuvers and fired his weapons with good accuracy. For 90 seconds, he looked like he might actually have a chance. Then Krevith stopped playing with him. The Vakrin fighter moved with impossible speed. It dodged every shot Woo Jin fired. Its weapons tore through the Hwaseong 7's shields like they weren't even there. Woo Jin tried to run, tried to dodge, tried everything he knew. It wasn't enough. The Vakrin's final shot hit the Hwaseong 7's cockpit directly. The ship exploded in a bright flash. There wasn't even time for Woo Jin to eject. Ji Woo watched from her apartment. She had told herself she wouldn't look, but she couldn't help it. She saw the young pilot die. She saw the confidence turn to panic, turn to nothing. Just like she had seen so many times before. Her hands clenched into fists. The Vakrin broadcast again. Texar's face filled the screens. Your champion is dead. Your time is up. We will begin destroying your cities in 1 hour. Perhaps you will be more cooperative when half your population is gone. The Colonial Defense Center exploded into chaos. People screamed. Some cried. Others argued about surrender. Tae Yang stood in the center of it all, his mind racing. They had no options left, no ships, no pilots, nothing. Then his intelligence officer burst into the room. Sir, I found something. About Han Ji Woo. You need to see this right now. Tae Yang followed him to a secure terminal. The officer pulled up classified military files. Documents that should have been erased years ago. He showed Tae Yang a photo. It was a younger Ji Woo in a military flight suit, standing next to a fighter with a phoenix painted on its side. That's impossible, Tae Yang whispered. The phoenix died 8 years ago. Her DNA is still in the military database. I ran a cross-check. It's a perfect match. Sir, Han Ji Woo is the phoenix. She's been alive this whole time. Tae Yang stared at the photo. The most legendary pilot in human history was working at a cargo dock on his colony. She had been here for years, and she had lied to his face. He grabbed his coat and ran for the door. Get me a security team. We're bringing her back here now. Outside, the first explosion started. The Vakrin were targeting the outskirts of the colony. Buildings collapsed. Fires spread. People ran through the streets screaming. Jiwoo stood at her window watching the city burn. She had lived through this before. She had thought she could avoid it by running away. But war had found her anyway. Behind her, someone pounded on her door. Han Jiwoo, open up, this is Colonial Defense. She closed her eyes. The past had finally caught up to her. She had known it would eventually. She just hoped it would take longer. Jiwoo opened the door. Tai Yang stood there with 4 armed guards. But he didn't look angry. He looked desperate. I know who you are, Tai Yang said quietly. Please, we need you. Everyone here needs you. Jiwoo looked past him at the burning city. She thought about Hee-won in the shelter. She thought about all the people who just wanted to live quiet lives. She thought about Woo Jin, dead because he tried to be a hero. I can't save you, Jiwoo said. I'm not asking you to save us, Tai Yang replied. I'm asking you to give us a chance. That's all. Just a chance. Another explosion shook the building. Somewhere someone screamed Jiwoo made her decision. Show me the ship, she said. The hangar was cold and smelled like fuel and metal. Jiwoo walked past the guards and maintenance crews, her eyes fixed on the fighter in the center of the bay. It was the same Hwaseong 7 that Woo Jin had flown. The same ship that had been torn apart in space just hours ago, except it wasn't the same ship. The maintenance team had worked frantically to prepare a backup fighter. It looked identical, but Jiwoo could see the small differences. Older paint. Different serial numbers. This one had been in storage for years. Seung-ho walked up to her, wiping grease from his hands. She's not pretty, but she's functional. I've checked every system 3 times. The weapons are loaded, shields are at maximum, and I replaced the coolant system with newer parts. Jiwoo nodded, running her hand along the ship's hull. The metal felt familiar under her palm. She had flown ships like this 100 times. 1,000 times. But that was in another life. How long since you've flown combat? Tai Yang asked, standing a few feet behind her. 8 years, 2 months, and 16 days, Jiwoo said without turning around. That's very specific. That's the last time I killed someone. Jiwoo finally looked at him. That's the last time I watched friends die because I wasn't fast enough to save them. That's the last time I looked in a mirror and saw a monster staring back. Tai Yang was quiet for a moment. We don't need a monster. We just need a pilot. I'm not sure there's a difference anymore, Jiwoo said softly. She climbed up the ladder to the cockpit. The seat felt wrong at first. Too tight. Too familiar. Her hands found the controls automatically, muscle memory taking over. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed. The cargo dock supervisor was gone. Something harder had taken her place. Tai Yang contacted the Vakrin and informed them that Nueva Terra had a new champion. Thexar appeared on the communication screen, his insect face showing what might have been amusement. Another human wishes to die? Very well, send your warrior to the combat zone. Krevith is eager for more blood. We request 1 hour to prepare our pilot. Tai Yang said, you have 30 minutes. Thexar replied and cut the transmission. Seung-ho and his team ran final checks on the Hwaseong 7. They gave Jiwoo a communication headset so she could talk to the ground team during the fight. It wasn't standard for Vakrin combat trials, but the aliens didn't care about small details like that. As the clock counted down, word spread through the colony that someone was going to face the Vakrin again. People gathered in shelters and homes, watching their screens with a mixture of hope and dread. Most expected to see another pilot die. They didn't know that their champion was a legend they thought was dead. Jiwoo sat in the cockpit, going through pre-flight checks. Her hands moved across the controls without thinking. Flip this switch. Check that gauge. Verify the weapon systems. It all came back so easily. Too easily. Tai Yang's voice came through her headset. 5 minutes until launch. How are you feeling? Like I'm making a mistake, Jiwoo answered honestly. You're giving us hope. That's not a mistake. Hope gets people killed, Jiwoo said. I've seen it happen. So has everyone who lived through the war, Tai Yang replied. But we kept hoping anyway. That's what makes us human. Jiwoo didn't respond. She watched the countdown timer tick away the seconds. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. 1 minute. The hangar doors opened, revealing the night sky. Stars shined above, beautiful and cold. Somewhere up there, the Vakrin waited. Somewhere up there, A pilot named Krevith had killed 47 challengers from different species. He had never lost a battle. There was a first time for everything. Launch when ready, Taeyang said. Jiwoo pushed the throttle forward. The Hwasong 7's engines roared to life. The ship lifted off the ground, stabilized, and then shot upward into the sky. The acceleration pressed Jiwoo back into her seat. The force felt good, familiar, real. She broke through the atmosphere in 90 seconds. The curve of Nueva Terra fell away below her. Above, space opened up like an endless black ocean. And waiting in that ocean were 12 Vakran warships, each one massive enough to carry 1,000 fighters. In the center of the formation was a smaller ship. Sleek, dark, and covered in biomechanical armor. That was Krevith's fighter. It looked more alive than mechanical, as if it had been grown rather than built. Combat zone is marked, Seung-ho's voice said in her ear. Stay within the boundary. Any deviation and the Vakran will consider it a forfeit. Jiwoo checked her instruments. The combat zone was a sphere about 50 kilometers wide. Plenty of room to maneuver, but not enough to run. The Vakran had designed it that way. They wanted quick battles that ended in spectacular deaths. Krevith's ship moved forward, positioning itself on the opposite side of the zone. Jiwoo could see it now through her cockpit window. It was beautiful in a terrible way. All smooth curves and sharp edges. Small tendrils extended from its surface, twitching like they were alive. A voice came through on an open channel. It sounded like grinding rocks mixed with clicking mandibles. I am Krevith, champion of the Vakran Empire. I have killed 47 challengers. You will be 48. Jiwoo didn't respond. She checked her weapons one more time. 2 plasma cannons, 4 missiles, 1 emergency pulse weapon that would drain all her power if she used it. Not much to work with against a ship that was clearly superior in every way. The countdown began. 10 seconds, 9, 8. Taeyang's voice came through her private channel. Everyone's watching. Everyone's hoping. No pressure. Thanks, Jiwoo said dryly. That helps a lot. 3, 2, 1. The combat started. Krevith launched forward immediately, closing the distance between them with incredible speed. His weapons fired before Jiwoo could even react. Plasma bolts streaked across space, each one aimed with perfect accuracy. Jiwoo jerked the controls hard to the left. Her ship rolled, dodging most of the shots, but one clipped her right wing, making the shields flare bright blue. The impact rattled the entire cockpit. She fired back, sending a stream of plasma toward Krevith. The Vakran pilot didn't even try to dodge. His shields absorbed the hits without any visible damage. He just kept coming, firing continuously. His shields are too strong, Seung-ho said urgently. Your weapons aren't penetrating, I noticed, Jiwoo said through gritted teeth. She dove downward, then pulled up hard, looping around behind Krevith. She fired again, hitting his rear shields. Same result. No damage. Krevith spun his ship with impossible precision and fired back. More hits on Jiwoo's shields. The gauge showed she was down to 70%. At this rate, she would be dead in 2 minutes. On Nueva Terra, people watched in horror. They saw their champion getting hit again and again. They saw her shields dropping. Some started to cry. Others turned away, unable to watch another pilot die. But Taeyang watched closely. He saw something the others didn't. Jiwoo wasn't fighting like a desperate pilot. She was testing her opponent, learning his patterns. Every dodge, every shot, every maneuver was gathering information. Jiwoo's mind worked quickly as she fought. Krevith was fast. His reflexes were better than hers. His ship was stronger. His weapons were more powerful. In a straight fight, she would lose, so she wouldn't fight straight. She noticed that Krevith always attacked from the same angles. His movements were perfect, but they were also predictable. He relied on his ship's superior technology. He expected his enemies to panic and make mistakes. Jiwoo stopped panicking. She stopped trying to outfight him. Instead, she started thinking. There was a debris field nearby, remnants of old mining operations. Broken asteroids, scattered metal, pieces of old equipment floating in space. Most pilots would avoid it. Too many obstacles. Too dangerous. Jiwoo turned her ship and flew straight toward it. What are you doing? Taeyang's voice was sharp with concern. Something stupid, Jiwoo replied. Krevith followed her into the debris field, still firing. But now Jiwoo had obstacles to use. She flew between 2 large asteroids, and Krevith's shots hit the rocks instead of her ship. She rolled around a piece of broken station, putting it between her and her enemy. Krevith's voice came through the channel, sounding annoyed. Hiding among rocks? This is coward behavior. Call it what you want, Jiwoo muttered to herself. She killed her engines and let her ship drift behind a large asteroid. She waited, counting seconds in her head. Krevith flew past, searching for her. As he passed, Jiwoo fired her engines at full power and shot out from behind the asteroid. She was now on his tail, so close that his shields were almost touching hers. She fired everything she had at point-blank range. Plasma bolts hammered into his rear shields. For the first time, they flickered. Not much, not even close to failure. But they flickered. Krevith spun around faster than should have been possible and returned fire. Jiwoo barely dodged. Her shields dropped to 40%. But she was smiling for the first time in 8 years. Because she had learned something important. Krevith could be hurt. It would just take more than she currently had. On the ground, Seung-ho watched his instruments carefully. Your ship is taking too much damage. Shields are failing. Life support is stable, but your coolant system is running hot. Can you reroute power from the non-essential systems? Jiwoo asked. To where? Engines. I need speed more than anything else right now. That's risky. If your engines overload, just do it, Jiwoo ordered. The battle had been going for 15 minutes. To the people watching from Nueva Terra, it felt like hours. They saw their pilot dodging, weaving, using every trick she could think of, but they also saw her ship taking more damage with each passing minute. Jiwoo's shields were down to 20%. Her right engine was sputtering. One of her plasma cannons had overheated and shut down, but she was still flying, still fighting, and that alone was incredible. No one else had lasted this long against Krevith. The Vakran pilot seemed frustrated now. His attacks were getting more aggressive, less precise. He had expected this fight to be over in 5 minutes. Instead, this human kept slipping away like smoke. Enough games, Krevith snarled over the open channel. I will end this now. His ship accelerated to maximum speed, firing continuously. Jiwoo had nowhere left to hide in the debris field. She made a decision that seemed insane to everyone watching. She turned her ship and flew straight at him. What are you doing? Taeyang shouted through the comm. Trust me, Jiwoo said calmly. The two ships raced toward each other, both firing. Plasma bolts filled the space between them. Jiwoo's shields failed completely. Direct hits slammed into her hull. Alarms screamed in the cockpit. But she didn't change course. At the last possible second, she fired her emergency maneuvering thrusters. Her ship jerked sideways, barely avoiding a head-on collision. As she passed Krevith, she released both of her remaining missiles at point-blank range. The missiles hit Krevith's shields and exploded. This time the shields didn't just flicker. They went down completely for almost 3 seconds before regenerating. 3 seconds was enough for Jiwoo to see something important. When the shields dropped, she saw that Krevith's ship had cooling vents along its underside. They glowed bright red, venting excess heat from the biomechanical systems. That's your weakness, Jiwoo whispered. Krevith's shields came back online, stronger than before, but now he was angry. Really angry. His voice came through the channel, filled with rage. You dare damage my ship? I will make your death slow. He chased after Jiwoo with murderous intent. His weapons fired faster than before, more shots, more power. Jiwoo's ship was falling apart. Hull plates were torn off. Sparks flew from damaged systems. Her cockpit filled with smoke. Hull integrity at 30%, Seung-ho reported, his voice tight with worry. You've got maybe 2 more hits before structural failure. How long until Nueva Terra's sun is in optimal position? Jiwoo asked. There was a pause. What? The sun, Seung-ho. We're orbiting it. When will it be directly behind me from Krevith's position? Seung-ho checked his calculations. 4 minutes. But I don't understand. You will, Jiwoo said. She changed course, flying in a wide arc. She was leading Krevith exactly where she wanted him. The Vakran pilot followed eagerly, thinking his prey was running out of options. And he was right. Jiwoo's ship was barely holding together. One engine was dead. Her remaining weapon had maybe 3 shots left before the power cells emptied. She was flying on borrowed time. But that's all she needed. On Nueva Terra, Taeyang stood in the command center watching the tactical display. He suddenly understood what Jiwoo was doing. She's positioning him, he said to the others. She's using the sun. Jiwoo flew closer and closer to Nueva Terra's orbit. The planet was between her and the sun now. But in 4 minutes she would clear the planet's shadow. And so would Krevith, 3 minutes. Krevith hit her again. The shot tore through her damaged right wing completely. Her ship spun wildly. Jiwoo fought the controls, barely managing to stabilize. Life support failing, the computer announced in a calm voice. Emergency systems activated, 2 minutes. Jiwoo's hands were steady on the controls even though her ship was dying around her. She could see the planet's shadow ahead. Just a little further. Krevith fired again, but this shot missed. He was too eager, too focused on finishing her. He didn't notice the sun getting brighter ahead of them. 1 minute. Jiwoo cleared the planet's shadow. Brilliant sunlight flooded her cockpit. She had positioned herself so the sun was directly behind her from Krevith's perspective. She quickly activated her ship's reflective panels, bouncing concentrated sunlight back at her enemy. It wasn't much. It wasn't a weapon, but it was enough to overwhelm Krevith's optical sensors for just a moment. He was temporarily blinded. In that moment, Jiwoo made her move. She cut her remaining engine and let her ship drift. Krevith flew past her, his sensors confused by the sudden loss of engine signature and the blinding light. Jiwoo manually rotated her ship using just the maneuvering thrusters. She aimed for those cooling vents she had seen earlier. She had one weapon left, one shot. Everything depended on this. She fired her last plasma bolt directly into the exposed cooling vents on Krevith's underside. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The cooling system that regulated the biomechanical ship's temperature failed. Heat began building up inside the vessel with nowhere to go. Warning lights flashed across Krevith's control panels. He roared in anger and tried to turn his ship around. But the heat was already affecting his systems. His weapons powered down automatically to prevent overload. His shields flickered and died. For the first time in 47 battles, Krevith was vulnerable. Jiwoo's ship was powerless now. Her weapons were empty. Her engines were gone. Her shields had failed minutes ago. But she still had one thing left: mass and momentum. She used her last bit of fuel in the maneuvering thrusters to change her trajectory. She aimed her dead ship directly at Krevith's disabled fighter. "Jiwoo, what are you doing?" Taeyang's voice was desperate. "You need to eject." "Not yet," Jiwoo said quietly. Her ship drifted toward Krevith, slowly at first, then faster as gravity took hold. The Vakran pilot saw her coming. He tried desperately to restart his engines, but his systems were still overheating. "You cannot win," Krevith screamed. "Even if you destroy me, you will die too." "I know," Jiwoo said. She had accepted that possibility the moment she climbed into the cockpit. The two ships came closer together. 50 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters. On Nueva Terra, people held their breath. Was she really going to do it? Was she going to ram him? 10 meters, Krevith's engines finally came back online. He tried to move, but it was too late. 5 meters, Jiwoo reached for the ejection lever. "Goodbye," she whispered to the ship that had carried her this far. She pulled the lever. The cockpit exploded outward. The ejection seat rocketed away from the dying Hwaseong 7, carrying Jiwoo with it. Behind her, her ship collided with Krevith's fighter at tremendous speed. The impact crushed both ships. Metal tore. Systems exploded. The biomechanical ship let out a sound almost like a scream as it died. Krevith didn't have time to eject. His ship's damaged systems couldn't respond fast enough. The two ships spun through space, locked together in a fatal embrace. Small explosions rippled across both vessels. Then one final massive explosion consumed them both. Jiwoo's ejection seat carried her away from the blast. The force wave hit her, sending her tumbling through space. The seat's emergency beacon activated automatically, broadcasting her location. She looked back at the fireball that had been two ships. It was beautiful in a terrible way, fire and light and death, all mixed together in the cold darkness of space. Her body hurt everywhere. Her suit reported multiple injuries, broken ribs, concussion, internal bleeding, but she was alive. Through her helmet radio, she heard silence. Then slowly, sounds began to filter through. Cheering, crying, people shouting with joy. "She did it," someone said. "She actually did it." Taeyang's voice came through, shaking with emotion. "Jiwoo, are you there? Can you hear me?" "I'm here," she said weakly. "Did we win?" "Yes, by Vakran law they have to leave now. You beat their champion. You saved us all." Jiwoo closed her eyes. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired. So very tired. "Send someone to pick me up," she said. "I think I'm done flying for today." Above her, the Vakran warships began to move. Tekzar's voice came through on an open broadcast filled with cold fury. "You have won this day, human. But know this, the Vakran Empire will remember. We will return, and next time there will be no trials, no honor, only death. The 12 massive ships turned and jumped to faster-than-light travel, disappearing in flashes of purple light. Nueva Terra was safe. For now. A rescue ship launched from the colony, racing to retrieve Jiwoo before her life support ran out. She floated in space, watching the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. She had tried to run from war. She had tried to forget who she was. But in the end, that person had been inside her all along. The Phoenix hadn't died. She had just been sleeping. I'm too old for this, Jiwoo muttered to herself, but she was smiling. The medical bay was too bright and smelled like antiseptic. Jiwoo woke up slowly, her body feeling like it had been hit by a transport ship. Every muscle ached. Every breath hurt. But she was alive, and that was more than she had expected. A doctor checked her vital signs and gave her pain medication. She had 3 broken ribs, a concussion, internal bleeding that they had stopped, and more bruises than they could count. But she would recover. The doctor said she was lucky. Jiwoo didn't feel lucky. Taeyang visited her the next day. He brought flowers, which seemed strange for a military man. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I crashed a spaceship," Jiwoo said. "You did crash a spaceship," Taeyang pointed out. "Technically 2 of them." Jiwoo tried to laugh, but it hurt too much. She looked at Taeyang seriously. "How many people know who I really am?" "Everyone," Taeyang said gently. The Vakrin broadcast the entire battle across multiple systems. Someone ran facial recognition on the footage. Within an hour, every news service in human space was running the story. "The Phoenix returns" is the headline everywhere. Jiwoo closed her eyes. So much for her quiet life. So much for hiding. "I'm sorry," Taeyang said. "I know you wanted to stay hidden. But you saved 17 million people. They deserve to know who their hero is." "I'm not a hero," Jiwoo said quietly. "Heroes don't run away." "Heroes are just people who do the right thing when it matters most," Taeyang replied. "What you did before doesn't change what you did yesterday." Over the next few days, Jiwoo stayed in the medical bay recovering. Nurses came and went. Doctors checked on her. And visitors started arriving. So many visitors they came to thank her. Families whose lives she saved. Children who wanted to meet a real pilot. Old veterans who had served in the First Contact War and wanted to shake her hand. Jiwoo wasn't used to this kind of attention. She didn't know what to say to these people, but she listened to their stories. She heard about their lives, their fears, their hopes, and slowly she began to understand something. These people weren't thanking a legend. They were thanking a person who had been willing to fight for them. Ayewan visited on the 3rd day. The old woman had survived the Vakrin attack by hiding in the underground shelters. She brought homemade soup just like always. "I knew you were special," Heewon said, sitting beside Jiwoo's bed. "But I didn't know you were that special." "I tried not to be," Jiwoo admitted. "Why did you hide for so long, dear?" Jiwoo was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "During the war, I lost everyone I cared about. My squadron, my friends, people I loved. Every battle I won cost me something. By the end, I had won the war but lost myself. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. So I ran. And now?" Haewon asked gently. "Now I don't know. The person I was trying to be doesn't exist anymore. But I'm not sure I want to go back to being who I was before either." Heewon patted her hand. "Maybe you don't have to be either of those people. Maybe you can be someone new." That night, Jiwoo lay awake thinking about Heewon's words. Who was she now? Not the cargo dock supervisor anymore, but not the Phoenix from the war either. Something in between. Something different. The next morning, a young woman visited. Her name was Yoon Da-eun, and her eyes were red from crying. Jiwoo recognized the look. She had seen it many times during the war. "You're Woo-jin's sister," Jiwoo said quietly. Da-eun nodded. "He was my older brother. He wanted to be a hero so badly. He always talked about flying, about protecting people." "I'm sorry," Jiwoo said. "He was brave. He tried his best." "I know," Da-eun said. "I don't blame you for his death. I blame the Vakrin. And I blame myself for not stopping him when he volunteered." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I came here to ask you something." "What is it?" "Teach me. Teach me to fly like you do. Not because I want revenge. Because I want to make sure what happened to my brother doesn't happen to anyone else. I want to protect people the way you do." Jiwoo looked at this young woman, seeing the determination in her eyes. It reminded her of herself many years ago. "I'm not a teacher. I don't know if I can—" "Please." Yun interrupted. You're the best pilot humanity has ever had. If you teach others, if you share what you know, then maybe next time we won't need one hero. Maybe we'll have 100 heroes. 1,000. The idea stuck in Jiwoo's mind. She hadn't thought about teaching before. She had only thought about her own pain, her own need to hide. But Daun was right. If she shared her knowledge, if she trained others, then maybe fewer people would die. Let me think about it, Jiwoo said. Dayan left, and Jiwoo was alone with her thoughts again. Over the next week, as her body healed, she received an offer from Taiyang. Nueva Terra wanted to establish a proper defense academy. They wanted someone to run it, someone who knew combat, who understood warfare, who could train the next generation of pilots. They wanted her. Jiwoo's first instinct was to refuse. Teaching meant staying in one place. It meant being visible. It meant accepting who she was and what she had done, all the things she had spent 8 years avoiding. But every time she thought about refusing, she remembered Wu Jin's death. She remembered watching that young pilot die because he was brave but untrained. She remembered all the people she couldn't save during the war because there weren't enough skilled pilots. Maybe Haiwan was right. Maybe she could be someone new. Not the traumatized veteran running from her past. Not the legendary pilot who existed only in battle. But a teacher, someone who could help others survive what she had survived. 3 weeks after the battle, Jiwoo was released from the medical bay. A crowd gathered outside the hospital. People wanted to see her, to thank her, to celebrate her. Jiwoo felt uncomfortable with all the attention, but she walked through the crowd with her head up. Taiyang was waiting with a transport. Made your decision yet? He asked. Show me the academy site, Jiwoo said. They drove to the outskirts of the colony, where construction had already begun on a new training facility. It would have classrooms, simulators, hangar bays for practice ships, everything needed to train proper combat pilots. We've already had 300 applications, Taiyang said. People from all over Nueva Terra who want to learn. Not just young people either. Former cargo pilots, engineers, mechanics. Everyone who wants to help defend their home. Jiwoo walked through the construction site, imagining what it would look like when finished. She could picture students in the classrooms learning tactics. She could see them in simulators, practicing maneuvers. She could hear the sounds of ships launching for training runs. I have conditions, Jiwoo said. Name them. First, I don't train people to be weapons. I train them to protect others. Anyone who wants glory or revenge doesn't make it past the first day. Agreed, Taeyang said. Second, I choose my own staff. I need mechanics, tacticians, and other instructors who understand that survival is more important than looking heroic. You'll have full authority to hire whoever you need. Third, Jiwoo said, looking at Taeyang seriously. I'm not the Phoenix anymore. That name died 8 years ago. I'm just Jiwoo, a pilot who knows some things and wants to share them. Nothing more. Taeyang smiled. Just Jiwoo is more than enough. The academy opened 6 months later. Taeyun was in the first class. So were 73 other students of different ages and backgrounds. Seungho came on as the head mechanic. Other instructors joined, people who had served during the First Contact War and understood the realities of combat. On the first day, Jiwoo stood before her students. They looked at her with awe and expectation. She understood. They saw a legend. They saw the pilot who had beaten the Vakrin. My name is Han Jiwoo, she said. Some of you know my history. Some of you have heard stories about battles I fought. Forget all of that. Those stories are about someone who doesn't exist anymore. She walked along the front of the classroom. I'm not here to make you into copies of me. I'm not here to create more legends. I'm here to teach you how to survive, how to protect the people you love, how to come home after the battle is over. One student raised his hand. What if we can't? What if we're not good enough? Then you learn from your mistakes and get better, Jiwoo said. The only true failure is giving up. Everything else is just a lesson. The months passed. Jiwoo taught her students everything she knew. Not just flying, but tactics, strategy, and most importantly, how to think under pressure. She taught them that humans couldn't always outfight their enemies, but they could always outthink them. Word of the academy spread. Other colonies sent students. The Earth government offered funding. Soon, Nueva Terra became known as the home of the best combat pilots in human space. The Vakrin kept their promise. They didn't return to Nueva Terra. But they continued expanding into other areas of space, threatening other colonies, other species. Each time they issued their combat trial challenge, they found themselves facing pilots trained in the Phoenix Doctrine, as people started calling it. And more often than not, those pilots won. One evening, Ji-woo stood outside the academy watching the sunset. Dayun joined her, now a qualified pilot and junior instructor. "Do you regret it?" Dayun asked. "Coming back? Teaching us?" Ji-woo thought about the question. She thought about the quiet life she had lost. But she also thought about the students she had trained, the people they had saved.